Welcome back to Bonanza Disc Golf and to round 2 of the 6th annual Big Picture Classic at Pagosa. Look at those mountains. Let's go. Sitting 7 back with the lead, but only 3 back from Podium. So that's what we're shooting for today. Goal is to not take any bogeys and to get 2 eagles, because that was my initial goal and I didn't get any yesterday. So it looks like today we're getting both. We gotta talk a little bit about how I've been filming my rounds. This is like a little bit more of a remote tournament, so it's harder for me to find people to film for me necessarily. So there is someone, he's on the course right now and playing. He's gonna find me during my round to pick up the camera. But you're about to watch the first 1 to 9 holes, something in that, however long. I'm gonna go back through them and talk over them and talk about what I did on them, and then we'll get into when we actually have film from the tournament. But I noticed I got 4 birdies in a row right after I stopped recording with the GoPro, because it doesn't take a lot of line space, but it takes some, and it doesn't let you really get in the flow. So I'm really gonna focus on getting in that flow until he gets here, and then I'll be able to be in that flow while we record. All right, so unfortunately the weather kind of started to turn a little bit, and I had a 4-hour drive yesterday, so I ended up just heading out without walking the course and telling you. But let's walk through my first 7 holes, because on hole 8 we actually got some videos that we'll be able to talk through. But this I think is pretty important context, because as you guys know, my goal for this round was to podium, to get a top 3, and I knew that the guy who was in third was 8 down, so I was 3 back at him, and I assumed, hey, if he's gonna shoot 8 down again, he'll be at 16, so I need to shoot 11 or 12. But I was kind of in my head aiming for 9 or 10, which I felt would be good numbers anyways. And this was a pretty lofty goal. And so I started out thinking, hey, I need a birdie basically every hole, because every hole in this course is birdieable except for 7, and 18 is really hard, and there are 2 eagles. And I wanted to get both of them at some point during the tournament, and I got none of them the first day. So hole number 1, I step up to with my EchoStar Destroyer. I'm the top of the box for my card, which is the chase card. I was in 6th place to start. I ended up throwing a pretty solid drive, but I ended up juicing it a little bit because my forehands have been feeling really good. And I wind up about 40 feet past the basket behind a tree with kind of a weird little step out stepper putt that I end up running and hitting left side chains, chaining out, luckily taking the par though, and I'm fine with the par there. I don't mind kind of settling into things through the first 3 holes, because hole 3 I had aced in practice, chained out on the first day, and I figured, hey, this is probably gonna be a pretty easy birdie. So hole number 2, I walk up, it's 370 feet straight ahead. There's a massive tunnel that you have to hit. There's a slight tail left to right, and so I take my Color Glow Strike, which is slightly more stable than my other one, end up throwing it on a slight anhyzer, but because there's that tail left to right, I thought it was a little more stable than it was, and I also probably aimed a little more right than I intended to. Ended up throwing it on that anhyzer. It holds forever and eventually pans out, gets all the way down there, but leaves me with another 40-foot look. I end up stepping this one as well. Didn't roll my shoulders back, unfortunately. Hits the pin, no dice. So we're even through 2 holes, and this is a pretty slow start, seeing as I want to be 9, 10, or 11 down. So moving into hole number 3. Like I said, I had chained out the prior day. End up throwing a pretty good shot, a little inside, but it sits down just next to the basket, about 10 feet. Easy, basically tap in just outside the bullseye. Nice little circle 1 putt that I made for my first 2 of the round. Hole number 4 is that nice downhill hole, 296 feet. The wind is now pushing from the left to the right. So instead of throwing my super flippy pure, I end up throwing my slightly more stable baseline pure. Actually, I threw my gold line pure because of the wind, and I threw it just flat straight down the hill, knowing that it could fade out of it, but I end up just throwing the perfect distance and the perfect height just about 20 feet to the right, but I do make that putt as well. So we're 2 down through 4. Hole number 5 is the long par 5. Not long, but the longer one, 814 feet. You need 2 great shots to do it. My first shot, I take an EchoStar Destroyer, and I just try to push the back wall of trees, because I knew that on hyzer it'd start to fade a little early. It scared me a little bit for a second, but it did end up fading early and left me in a position basically where I was in my practice round, which is about 400-ish feet, not exactly sure, of a turnover into the basket. I'm between a couple discs, maybe my Pharaoh, maybe my Destroyer, but I knew that those I might have to baby a little bit on that turnover, because the wind was a helping wind, because it was kind of blowing up that fairway. And I knew with those, because they're so fast, if the speed slows down, they might stable out a little too early. So I took my Crystal Flex Heat, which I just added to the bag, because I knew that on turn, it's just gonna hold the turn for a while, especially if you hit it hard, but it is going to have that fight at the end, unlike my other heats, but it's gonna take forever for it to fight, because the shape of the fairway, you need it to hold the turn and then very barely fight out at the end. And I throw the perfect shot. This is the hole that I am so sad that I wasn't recording. People are calling for it to go in because we thought it would go in, and it landed about 15 feet from the basket, just past it. And I actually took a video of where it landed because I was so stoked on it. Tap in the eagle, one of only 4 eagles on the weekend from everybody. So I was super stoked to have gotten that eagle. Really, really great throw. And that moves us on to hole number 6, which is 572 foot par 4. This time I actually read the wind correctly, unlike the first day, and throw my faro because it's a slight headwind, but mostly a right to left. And so because of that, I knew if I put a lot of hyzer on my faro and threw it really wide, it would get out there, flip up a little, and just get pushed down the fairway. And it did. I ended in the perfect spot, basically with that tunnel look just straight down the gut, like I talked about in my practice round. Ended up throwing my crystal flex zone on a forehand, a little bit shanked. And this is kind of the first, I'm not getting along too well with my crystal flex zone moment of the round. There might be a couple more that come. Who knows? I threw it high enough and I knew that my miss was better with the forehand than the backhand. And it leaves me about 15 to 20 feet, which I tap in again and take another birdie. So at this point, through 6 holes, I am 5 down. And I'm starting to feel really good. I got 3 birdies and an eagle, giving me my 5 down. And hole number 7 is one that I'm not even trying to birdie. I throw my EchoStar Destroyer and leave it a little bit low. It hits a bush. That's scary if it gets stuck in it. Luckily, it pushed just through, so I had a really easy pitch up with my baseline zone, my UV1, I think. And it just leaves me with another 10-footer to tap in. And I'm really feeling good about the round. And this is where Danny picks up the camera and we're able to actually see the rest of my round. 5 down through 7 holes, basically only 1 or 2 off of a perfect start. I would say perfect would be 6 through 7, but there is that eagle, so I guess you could say 7 through 7, but I'm feeling great about this round. All I need is 5 more on the back 11 or 12 holes, which are all gettable, except for maybe hole 18 with 1 eagle out there. So I don't know if this is because I wasn't filming on my GoPro or not. I don't know if it makes that big of a difference. I was just throwing the disc well that day, and there were some times during my GoPro that I also threw disc. I don't know. Who knows? All right, let's get into the actual footage of the round real fast. So I'm really wanted to keep up my hot start. Hole number 8, just 224 foot, nice up the gut shot. I'm trying to throw up the middle, end up kind of shanking it, but it kind of gets through everything, leaves me with it just outside the circle look for another birdie. Now, I haven't been making a lot of steppers. I don't think I had any today. Oh, no, I had those 2 at the first 2 holes already. I already forgot about those, I guess. Missed those, but I'm really wanting to make it start because I made a couple of these yesterday and really feeling good about them. Unfortunately, I feel like I'm not getting my shoulders back enough and wasn't thinking about that enough. And I'm really frustrated by that because I'm really wanting to keep that hot round alive, keep that momentum going, because I've been executing basically everything since hole 3. And hole number 9 here, 351 foot, probably the hardest hole on the course that like is a birdie that you expect to get. This is the second day in a row that I have thrown a really clean forehand off the tee that has been just slightly inside, but this should be a relatively routine up and down from about 180 feet with my zone. From a standstill, I meant to turn it over a little bit so that it would flip over and come back, end up leaving it flat, which leaves me with just edge of circle, maybe just outside circle look, really wanting to make sure that I capitalize on this, feeling confident, stepping up to this, and just my mantra this tournament has been like, have the illusional confidence. I've been trying to think that for every shot, and walking up to this, I'm picking my spot, thinking, hey, I'm gonna make this, thinking, get my shoulders back, keep them up, leaves my hand. And I just left it a little bit high. As you saw, if you rewatch that, I kind of fling my hand up at it instead of really committing towards the basket. I kind of commit up. So left myself with a decent comebacker. I was actually still out. And so I was able to make that for the bogey, unfortunately. Very frustrated as that's a real momentum killer. Double Mando on hole number 10. I'm throwing that zone again. There's a slight headwind. I wanted to leave it flat, kind of rolled my wrist ever so slightly, and I really should have just kept to the game plan of my Ultra. I step up to this very fast. Honestly, my card's not even reset. I'm a little frustrated at this point, thinking let's make one of these finally 50-footers. Give it a good bid. Really frustrated because at this point I'm feeling like my round is kind of slipping away from me from the hot start that I had, because I need to make sure that I am basically on for all of these last holes to get my 10, 11 down. Hole number 11 here is the par 5, which should be a par 4, 764. The most common score on this was an eagle because it plays 1.16 strokes under par. So I'm thinking I need to get this eagle just like I got the one in the front 9, and that'd be great momentum. There's a slight headwind with a left to right, and so I left my Destroyer. I felt really out wide, but because of the headwind, it actually lands in that tree. Thinking back on this, this is just a forehand hole. I have a very strong forehand, especially during this tournament. I've been very confident with it. Take my Calvin Destroyer into the headwind. My miss will be back to the right, and I'll get out into the middle of that fairway because it's only about 380 feet. But here I'm throwing my Faro. I'm trying to throw a little bit of a hero shot where I follow through a little too forward instead of up, meaning that it doesn't stay on hyzer. I don't kind of keep it the nose up that it needs to, and it leaves me with this look with another zone to try to save the birdie. It's a really, really difficult lie, 2 difficult lies in a row, and it leaves me with an inside circle, maybe just edge of circle, actually a little bit closer than hole number 9's look to still take the birdie, because taking a par in this hole honestly feels like a bogey or a double because of how easy this hole is playing this weekend. And I just short it. And you can see it in my body language and in my demeanor, how frustrated I have been. And this felt like the last blow to my momentum that I really needed to get away from, because taking a par on that hole, the easiest hole on the course by far, was a very frustrating experience to have. But hole number 12 is 405 feet, slightly worse wind, slight headwind today. And this is a hole that I had birdied yesterday with basically a park job. I throw the same disc, the Echo Star Destroyer.
Yeah. Miss it all? Yeah.
And it just hits that tree. And again, another blow to my momentum. I feel like I am setting my goals and expectations pretty high for these tournaments, because I know the skills that I have. The consistency isn't quite there yet, and the way that I'm going to prove that to myself is in these tournaments. And so I'm wanting to get all of these. I'm feeling like I have the abilities to score really well, and I've just been slightly off this round. Not really a good bid there from about 60, 55 feet with the step putt. We're going to pan over from Danny and see all the beautiful horses and some donkeys. But it leaves me here with another kind of 20-footer, which if I take another bogey on this course, it is the potential to potentially drop me out of the cash. Maybe not at this point, but putting that over the rim from about 20, 25 feet makes me really happy. Leaves me with still a little bit of confidence knowing that there's something that I can salvage, because all these last holes except for 18 are birdieable. Hole number 13 is 269 feet. I just take my Firebird.
Yeah, go in. Do it, do it, do it.
Oh, just missed the ace. A little bit of a smile creeps through, and that's something I want to be seeing even in these rounds a little bit more. Definitely in my head at this point. Definitely need to learn how to get out of it, and I think my expectations and my goals for myself were just a little too high. I leave myself 40 feet long, unfortunately, and just step a little bit right side, right and low, which is exactly where I was aiming, because there's a slight headwind with the right to left. So I figured it would stand it up and push it into the middle of the basket. Didn't quite do that. A little bit frustrated at that point. Hole number 14, 260 feet. This was the one that ended my birdie streak yesterday. And so instead of throwing the MB, which I made the mistake of doing yesterday after having the gold line pure in my hand, I end up throwing that pure and end up putting it to about 10 feet. And it's getting a little bit cold at this point, so to stay warm, luckily I was smart enough to bring a jacket this time, like I talked about in my round yesterday, or in my post round yesterday. Finally getting another birdie, but that means since my super hot 5 through 6 or 5 through 7 start, I have bogeyed one and birdied one, leaving me even. I take my color glow strike here because there's a slight headwind, but not a lot. Doing the same thing that I did with my honor yesterday on hole 15, which is 350 feet, which is leaving me in almost the exact same position, just about 3 or 4 feet closer to the basket and a little bit lefter. So I have a more open look. Now this was a 35-foot putt, but at this point I already asked my card a couple times whether I've been out of the circle or not, and I'm thinking, hey, just get in your legs, like use your legs and your putt and make it from a standstill. As you saw, I was pretty low with my shoulders there, and I really didn't give it any opportunity to actually go in the basket, unfortunately. And I really should have just asked if I could have stepped that putt, or asked if they thought I was outside the circle, because I did step it out and I was outside the circle. And so you could see how dejected I am leaving that, which is not a good headspace to leave it to go into the final 3 holes, but I did start to check scores. And at this point, I was tied for 7th place, which is still in the cash. Hole 16 or 17 I knew I really wanted to get, 16 being arguably the more gettable of the two. And so I step up with my Crystal Flex zone, because if I threw the same shot that I did yesterday, the wind wouldn't hold it over and it would actually fade back towards the basket and give me a great look. I end up shorting it a little bit, not fully committed to the shot, and it hits a tree, leaving me with another long step putt.
Come on.
Now that was such a good bid from about 60, 70 feet, but just hitting that cage again frustrated the crap out of me. I actually ended up kind of kicking my mini, and it's not something that I'm super proud of. I don't think Danny actually caught it on camera, but my goals for this tournament, I think, were a little misaligned with my expectations. I think my goal of my second MPO tournament ever to get a top 3, where the top 2 players in the field are Connor Rock, who has toured and is dominating this region, and Joe Revere, who has dominated this region. To get the 3rd place in that, where there are a bunch of other 1,000 rated guys, people who've played significantly more MPO tournaments, probably wasn't the goal I should have had. Maybe a stretch goal, but not the main goal. And we kind of know the drill this tournament. We have a 55 to 60 foot look, something like that. Try to make a really good step putt. End up just missing it, leaving myself another 15, 20 footer. Not quite the easiest happens that I've been giving myself, but I've been giving myself opportunities for the birdies. And this putt I am very nervous about, because it just barely gets over the edge. I thought I shorted it too much. Wow, I didn't notice how dejected I was until I was watching this back, but you can very much see kind of how this round has gotten in my head through that. I'm not excited about the fact that I am very likely going to cash, and I start looking at scores and seeing that on hole 18, if I birdie, I'll move from tied 7th to a solo 7th place position, which would be a little bit more money. And so obviously I'm trying to do that, but at the same time, as long as I don't
don't bogey, I'm still going to stay in my tied 7th. I rip my Ricky 2-time destroyer, slight hyzer because it's a pretty decent headwind out there with a little bit of a left to right. I don't quite get all of it. I really wanted to leave it a little more right than that. It gets down the hill and I try to play smart golf and just put it underneath the basket. It was the smart play. I really wanted to try to run that, but I knew that if I bogeyed, it'd be really unfortunate. Place the disc in the basket to end the tournament. Let's talk about it.
All right, I was gonna wait to do this until I'm actually driving home right now. I was gonna stay in town, but look at this weather. It looks super thundery, and I'd rather like get a couple hours driving over the mountain passes before it gets super late. My quick reactions and outro to the day. This is just it was so frustrating. Not making any circle 2 putts today. None of them dropped. Had a couple like decent looks. Missing 2 inside the circle putts. One of them might have been just outside. The one that I missed standstill on hole like 15 was outside the circle. Missed that. Should have stepped it, but I hate having to ask to step it. And I like didn't step it out. Didn't want to get in my head and thought I could make it. I feel like after hole 11, I kind of checked out. When I parred that hole, which is like the easiest birdie in the world, it should be a par 4, honestly. And so I was expecting him to eagle it and then to throw just a poor tee shot, which I thought was good out of my hand, and then try to throw a little bit of a hero shot, which ended up not being great, but I like that play. I like staying aggressive there. And then just fluffing up that zone up shot. And that's the third takeaway is I need to practice a lot more with my zones. I don't know what they do in headwinds as much. And so there's a headwind on that hole 10 double mando hole. And I should have thrown the zone flat. I threw it on Anheuser thinking to fight out of it. A lot of like slightly poor decisions, but just off in execution this whole tournament, unfortunately. Really great first 6 holes. I mean, I was 5 down through 6 with that eagle after missing the first 2 with step putts. I'm tied 7th, so I will cash. Not sure how much money that'll be. I'll throw that on the screen. We might have to do like a cash counter of how much I cash versus how much I paid in entry fees. So I'll add that all up. I'll like insert a little quick segment here before the video, but this is that segment. So I actually am gonna do some quick maths because I got $140 for taking tied 7th. Not bad because it was $90 to enter the tournament. And we're gonna start a running tally of entry fees versus payouts. We're not gonna include like any lodging, any transportation. There's also some fees that are associated with stuff. And then there's also PayPal fees that were taken out of my winnings, unfortunately, which is $4. So including fees, this is how much the 3-3 Open cost, because that's the first tournament we played, didn't cash. Including fees, this is how much this last tournament was, and this is how much we won after fees. So lots of fees taking away money. We're not going to include taxes or anything like that. But let's see how long it takes me to get into the positive. Hopefully it's next tournament, but I have a decent bit of money to make up. Let's see how much money we make this year. Hopefully it's positive, but who knows? I'm not happy with how that ended up finishing, but it's my first cash and it's my first top 10. And the last thing that I think that I need to work on from this tournament, which is like, and there are some like good takeaways. Like I was putting relatively decent from circle 1. I'm going to continue working on the inline putts. I was hitting gaps for the most part, just like slight misses in a couple different situations. I got that eagle, which is a phenomenal second turnover on an 815-foot hole, got the 3. But the big thing is I think I set my expectations or my goals even a little too high because I'm someone who likes to exceed my goals. And when my goal was to get top 3 and I knew that I'd probably have to shoot 10 down, I probably should have stayed, hey, my goal is to keep my place or increase it or just stay top 10 because this is only my second MPO tournament. There's plenty of time to learn, lots of things to learn, and I mean this is a great learning experience. I love this course. I loved being back here. I might want to come back to this tournament again next year because I think they're going to have it again. Shout out Connor Rock for winning, Joe Revere coming in second. But yeah, I'm going to get some food in my system, and luckily I have a tournament next week, so this is not going to be in my head for long. I think it's going to average about to be about a 970 tournament, which is pretty unfortunate. I would love to get that a little bit higher, but that's what I've averaged these last 2 tournaments. Let's try to ratchet it up a little bit. Still above my rating, but not at my standard yet, I don't think. I've said it a couple times, but I'm going to try to give myself a month of like tournaments to get back in the swing because I still have like those weird tournament nerves. Not just the normal ones, but like the, I don't know how to play disc golf ones. So that's that. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. It's fun to get my first top 10, fun to get my first cash. Let's start a cash streak. If you want to check out the rest of the practice rounds and the first round, check it out right down there if you haven't seen it yet. Otherwise, my last tournament vlogs, if you haven't watched those, right down here in that playlist. I'll see you guys in the next one. I appreciate you guys so much for watching. That's it. Okay, love you. Bye.